Hi and welcome. My name is Sophia Soto-Sugar and I'm a program specialist at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum. I'm delighted to have you join us for Week 2, Day 5 of the American Women of Science Recovering History, Defining the Future Virtual Symposium. Today's session will focus on full partners in science, gender equity and inclusion. Before we begin the symposium, here are a few details about how this will work. So first, we are recording this session. The recording will be made available afterwards on our website, womenshistory.si.edu. We are also offering live closed captioning of this event, which you can enable at the bottom bar. This program is being conducted in listen and view only mode, which means your microphone is muted and camera is disabled. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's first panel, Agencies in Action, Lessons Learned from Diversity Initiatives at U.S. Scientific Institutions, featuring Elise Fisher, Smithsonian Science Press Secretary, Dr. Iris Wagstaff, STEM Program Director, and the American Association for Advancement of Science, and Dr. Alice Hellman, Program Officer at the National Academies of Science, as well as Dr. Jessie DeAro, Program Director at the National Science Foundation. Elise, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today to hear our panel discussion, Agencies in Action, Lessons Learned from Diversity Initiatives at U.S. Scientific Institutions. My name is Elise Fisher. I'm Science Press Secretary at the Smithsonian, and I'm extremely pleased to moderate today's discussion because, as our panel's title indicates, we'll be hearing from representatives at some of the country's premier scientific organizations about what we can learn from the initiatives and programs they have in place to advance gender equity in the sciences. Joining us today for this conversation, we have Dr. Iris Wagstaff, STEM Program Director in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS. Dr. Alex Hellman, Program Officer for the Committee on Women in Science, Engineering, and Medicine, which is a standing committee of the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And finally, Dr. Jessie DeAro, who is Program Director for Advance, Organizational Change for Gender Equity in STEM Academic Professions, which is a program of the National Science Foundation. So thank you all so much for being here with us to lend your insight, and I'm just going to go ahead and dive right into our questions because, as I've mentioned, each of your organizations has different equity and diversity initiatives we'll be speaking to today. So I'd like to just go ahead and start by asking each of you to give me just a brief overview in terms of what your program entails, its goals for addressing barriers for women in science, how long the program has been in place, and so on. So I'll go ahead and start with Dr. Wagstaff. Could you share with us a little bit about the STEM program at AAAS, which I understand focuses on broadening representation and inclusion in the sciences in a number of different ways?
Yeah, sure. So our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, which is formerly Education and Human Resources, which most people know this area for the last 40 years at AAAS, that was formerly headed by Shirley Malcolm. But we basically we have a portfolio of initiatives and programs focused on broadening participation, workforce development, and inclusive innovation. So I'll just mention 3 of our programs that are specifically targeted to support women in science at all levels. And I'll start with our oldest program, which is our L'Oreal for Women in Science postdoctoral fellowship for women, which supports women in all areas of STEM. We've had that program since 2003, and it basically provides up to 5 awards of $60,000 to 5 women in all areas of STEM. They have to be currently in a postdoc and a U.S. citizen and majoring in, one of the various areas of STEM. And basically the goal of this program is really to provide support to kickstart research careers for these women. They don't have to be in an academic area. They can be in industry or other areas, but it's basically to provide support where they wouldn't be able to purchase lab equipment or supplies or go to specific conferences. So it's very broad based on the budget that they submit. But the L'Oreal for Women in Science Award also has an outreach component. So about 10% of that time during the year while they are awarded this fellowship, they'll actually be doing some type of outsource to support young girls, so from K-12 all the way up to women in sciences. So our second initiative, which is our Mason Award for the Women in Chemical Sciences, is named after Marion Milligan Mason, who was a longtime supporter. She was a chemist in the early 1960s. She was a longtime member of AAAS, and she left a $2 million bequest to support women in science because she was basically a pioneer in the late 50s as a woman, in the chemical sciences. And she wanted to honor her father, who really also supported women in higher education in general. So this is another award that is provided to up to 5 women in the chemical sciences. So chemistry, biochemistry, anything that's related to the chemical sciences, and it supports their career efforts for academic research careers. And again, that award is very broad. That $60,000 can go towards lab equipment, anything that supports research, whether it's publications or trips as well. And then our third initiative is our newest one, and it's the If Then Ambassadorship. So AAAS If Then Ambassadors is supported by the Lyda Hill Foundation. And we select anywhere from 100 to 125 women in all areas of STEM. And this is one initiative that supports women at the undergraduate level as well. So you don't have to have an advanced degree. You can have a bachelor's or an associate's degree in any STEM field. And basically these 125 ambassadors really serve as role models for girls at the middle school level. During that year, they participate in a number of public engagement activities. They create media products, and they also work with members of the Lyda Hill Foundation and Gina Ward to create commercials and other type products to really just make a better image for women in science overall. So those are 3 of our initiatives that are targeted specifically for women in all different areas in their STEM careers.
Fantastic. No, thank you. I really appreciate the highlights there. Moving to Dr. Hellman now, can you give us a bit of background on the Committee on Women in Science, Engineering, and Medicine from the National Academies and the kind of work that the committee's been doing for decades now, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, thank you. So the National Academies is a little bit different than AAAS or NSF in that we sort of provide the humble job of providing advice to the nation in times of great scientific need. So rather than running programs, we sort of collect and disseminate information. And so for our committee specifically, we are the Committee on Women in Science, Engineering, and Medicine, and CWSM as we call it informally, is celebrating its 30th year this year. So we're really excited for all the work that this committee has been able to accomplish over the last 30 years, both within the National Academies and within the sort of the STEM enterprise writ large. And so our job really is to sort of help inform the nation on ways to promote and advance women in STEM fields. And so we do that in a number of ways. And I'll just talk about a few of the recent reports that we've released in some of our ongoing initiatives. So in February of this year, we released a report that was partially sponsored by NSF, by NIH, and by L'Oreal USA on promising practices for addressing the underrepresentation of women in science, engineering, and medicine. And so this report really went through different STEM disciplines, why we see different patterns of women's representation in these fields, sort of what can be done to promote, advance, recruit, retain women in these fields, and how, given that, at least for the Standing Committee on Women, we've been doing this for 30 years, and I know others have been at this even longer, why we don't see sustained adoption of some of these best practices that we've known have been around for many years. And so I'll just give a shout out to my colleagues on this panel that, some of the initiatives that AAAS is undergoing, the IFN ambassadorship program sort of speaks to one of the recommendations in the report, which is to highlight women, to see them as role models, to have them be visible, particularly in fields where we see very low representation of women at young ages, like physics and computer science. And then the Nsf Advanced Program, which of course has been just pivotal in this arena for advancing women in STEM fields, and is mentioned throughout this report. So that report, like I said, it launched in February, just in time for COVID to hit. So we are doing an ongoing dissemination effort for the report, sort of going around sharing the rich information in this report. But at the same time, we're seeing that we were starting to see that there was an increased demand for people, knowing that COVID-19 and the pandemic is creating all sorts of new challenges for women, particularly for women of color. We wanted to sort of build upon the work in this report. And so we have an ongoing fast track consensus study report that sort of use the promising practices report sort of as a baseline knowledge, and then sort of build from that on how COVID-19 is sort of exacerbating these issues and looking at specific areas where COVID-19 and the pandemic are, making things worse for women in many ways, and sort of just examining, adding sort of additional context to the report. And so that'll be out in the beginning of 2021. We also, in 2018, released a report on sexual harassment of women in science, engineering, and medicine, particularly academic science, engineering, and medicine, that sort of outlined what sexual harassment means, sort of defined it, defined the prevalence within STEM fields, and then gave recommendations for how to address and prevent sexual harassment in higher education. And so from that report, we launched what we're calling an action collaborative to prevent sexual harassment in higher education. And so this initiative consists of 63 institutions that are working together to sort of take a preventative approach to prevent sexual harassment on their campuses. And so this is, I find, to be a really exciting initiative, because I think this gives institutions a way to talk through issues together, to sort of collaborate on different initiatives, but also because the level of transparency. I just want to give a shout out to some of the members of the staff running the Action Collaborative who have spent so much time over the summer putting together a list of resources that they're called an annual report. And essentially it's every member of the Action Collaborative, all 63 institutions, have submitted their work and what they're doing to address sexual harassment on their campus. And this will be updated every year. And so you can sort of go by the type of initiative, whether it's prevention, response, et cetera, and look at what institutions are doing. And sort of the level of transparency there, I think, is really important, and being able to share what's working and best practices.
Great, thank you. And now moving to Dr. Diaz as well, I'll ask you the same thing. If you can just share a little bit about the advanced program from the National Science Foundation, which is a little different from some of the other efforts we're talking about today, in that it looks to support academic institutions in their efforts to bring about their own organizational change.
Right, thank you. Yes, so then the National Science Foundation has a unique role in terms of science and engineering research in the country. It's one of the main providers of basic research dollars in terms of grants to individual investigators who are doing research in science and engineering in various disciplines. And we have been working on diversity issues at the National Science Foundation since the 1980s. And we've implemented various programs to increase the diversity of individuals at all levels in STEM education and the workforce since then. Advanced, though, stands out, and it stands out because it is looking at making systemic changes to the organizations and institutions within which science education and science research is done. So instead of other programs which help individual women via the fellowship activities or training activities, et cetera, to succeed in their STEM education degree or in their workplace, the advanced program is actually looking at how we can change the workplace and change the educational place so that it's more welcoming and inclusive to diverse individuals in general. So we know from decades of social science and behavioral research that there are institutional systemic barriers that have been created in the universities and colleges where a lot of the scientific research is undertaken by faculty. And those systems and policies and traditions have resulted in fewer women and fewer underrepresented racial and ethnic minorities participating in STEM academic careers. So the advanced program focuses on that very unique slice of the STEM workforce, which is the academic workforce, because they do influence the next generation of scientists in terms of training them at the undergraduate and graduate level. And they are the role models and mentors for those students. And they're the people who either encourage or discourage students from pursuing science as a profession. And so having diverse faculty is important ultimately in the long run for ensuring diverse students. So the advanced program is focused on fixing organizations rather than fixing people and helping them survive in a system. Instead, we're asking, can the system be changed so that it's more welcoming and more inclusive, and also still do excellent science and engineering research and education? In fact, we know that diverse researchers and diverse teams end up producing more innovation and more interesting research than non-diverse teams, and we find that in industry and elsewhere. So this is really the smart thing to do for us at the National Science Foundation. We want a diverse, active, productive scientific workforce that includes all of our population in the United States. Otherwise, we're not setting ourselves up to really resolve the global challenges that we have in terms of the scientific and engineering challenges we face with global warming, renewable energy, etc. So this is one of the reasons that I truly love the advanced program, is that it has tested out this model of making systemic changes as a way to increase diversity. And so it's added a very important tool to the toolkit that the various organizations in the federal level, the state level, can use to achieve diversity goals.
Great, thank you. Well, and when you speak about systemic changes in this way, it's a good segue to our next question here. For those who are watching from other organizations that either may have their own equity initiatives already in place or are looking at implementing initiatives of their own, one of those tough questions is kind of how we measure success in that regard, how we're benchmarking, particularly when that success can feel very incremental. And so I'll start with Dr. Wagstaff again. In your work at AAAS with the STEM program, which, as you've said, between some of these awards programs and the new IFTHEN ambassadorship, we'd be curious to hear how you're evaluating the work you're doing, or how you think about what success looks like for these programs, either existing or some of these more recent newer programs.
So I'll just mention, since I don't actually run the programs that I mentioned, but in general, actually all of my programs are supported by the National Science Foundation. So the Emerging Researchers National Conference in STEM, our HBCU Making and Innovation efforts, and several of those opportunities, which all have a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and helping to support our next generation of diverse STEM leaders. But so for all of our programs in general, we have internal evaluation efforts within AAAS, and then we always have external evaluation efforts where we hire an external evaluator for the three programs that I mentioned. So for L'Oreal, over the last 2 years, we've been working with L'Oreal to create a survey to survey the 80 fellows that we've supported since 2003 to get their input on impact and benefits of the programs, as well as next steps and how we can strengthen that support and also share those learnings using L'Oreal as a model. The other two programs as well have again, internal and external evaluation components that also include reports twice a year from fellows. They keep us up to date on their engagement activities and how they're transitioning to different phases in their career. So for example, from undergrad to grad, if they're in a postdoc, the majority of the L'Oreal fellows go into academic research careers. So on their journey for tenure, promotion, negotiating salaries, there are other ways that we can support them on that journey. So we always like to hear from them through a number of mechanisms, whether that's survey, focus groups, interviews, in addition to our standard internal and external evaluations. But basically, in general, we want to see that our programs are actually beneficial, but also we want to share, AAAS is always interested in sharing best practices and strategies to support women in STEM, not only women in STEM, but especially underrepresented minorities and that could be through reports, the many convenings that we have throughout the year as well. So it's a combination of those efforts.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned best practices, and so I'll turn to Dr. Hellman because you said that the Committee on Women in Science, Engineering, and Medicine, a large part of the work that you do is developing some of these best practices and reporting out on recommendations to addressing some of these barriers to women in science. So I'd ask sort of along these same lines, if you could tell us a little bit more about how the committee develops those recommendations, or in other words, how the committee comes to these conclusions about what works or what might be promising in this space.
Yeah, that's a great question. We like to think of our committee process. Most of our reports we call them consensus reports. If it's, published by the National Academies as a consensus report, it's a committee publication. So it's a committee of experts during the beginning process of once we have a task at hand and we have sponsors for the report, we put together a committee that we balance across a number of factors, including expertise, and then diversity across, different dimensions like race, ethnicity, geography, expertise, gender, etc. And essentially, we make them do the hardest group project of all time. So we put together a large group of experts, and we tell them we have to write a report, which, let's be honest, is a book oftentimes, and then put out recommendations on how to address the topic at hand, which oftentimes, particularly for the Committee on Women, is a tough task. Oftentimes we work on issues that are deeply personal to individuals, and people bring a lot to the table. And so as part of the committee process, everybody on the consensus committee agrees on everything that's written in the report on all the findings and recommendations. And so as a group, the committee gets input from a variety of individuals. We hold workshops and have presentations in order to sort of gather information and to allow for public comment. But in the end, it's really the committee that writes these reports, and they're the experts. And ultimately, they're the ones who agree on all the findings and recommendations. And there's sort of this power and sort of the group behind it saying that, no, as a committee with our whole variety of expertise and everything we bring to the table, these are the things that we think needs to really move the field and what needs to happen next in order to sort of advance women in STEM. So there's really that power behind it. I think having sort of this consensus process where everybody's in agreement.
That's great insight into the process. Thank you. And Dr. Deara, I'll put sort of a similar question to you as well. For the advanced program at NSF, we'd be curious to hear how you're thinking about what success looks like, or evaluating the program on an ongoing basis.
Sure. We do also regularly evaluate our programs at NSF, and we're in the at the end, I think, of a program evaluation on advance right now that is looking at the sustainability of the efforts that have been undertaken by advanced grantees, and then also the diffusion of advanced ideas to additional places, not just with additional advanced grantees, but to places that didn't get funding from NSF. So we know, for example, that 20 years ago, implicit bias training for search committees in academia was not common. But now it's much more of a common practice. And we think that the advanced investment in developing how you do implicit bias training for faculty in sciences and engineering over the last 20 years has helped inform that conclusion by a greater number of individuals that it's a strategy that's worth adopting even without a grant from NSF. And so that is something that we would look at as success for the program. In fact, the National Science Foundation itself has adopted implicit bias training for our own program officers and for our panelists who review our grant proposals. So that those decision points are less impacted by implicit biases by those who are on the panels or in program officer positions. So even NSF has adapted this strategy that has been developed by Advance. And so those are indicators of some success, is the uptake of strategies into the normal practice. But we also look at things like culture and climate surveys and changes over time for both men and women in terms of their job satisfaction and their intention to stay, their overall happiness at their institution. We see positive changes for both men and women when things are done well in terms of organizational change within a university. So this effort generally results in a better climate for all faculty, not just for women or underrepresented minority faculty, but for male faculty as well.
For each of these, very different programs, you're determining what works, and so it brings me to my next question, which is lessons learned. So I put it to you first, Dr. Wagstaff, to ask if you could share with us some of the lessons learned from the various STEM programs at AAAS, and particularly in a sense of what other institutions might be able to take away from this to inform their own efforts. And so that could be, what's most promising or what's least promising.
Thanks. So that's a loaded question. In addition to being a research chemist, I'm also a social scientist. So I'm a STEM educational researcher, and I focus a lot on the research and the data, and that really informs the programs that I develop at AAAS and the grant proposals that I develop. So really focusing on those gaps. Over the last 20 years, there have been a lot of programs and a lot of efforts for girls and women in science, but not all of those are successful, right? So one of the things that we look at is impact. So again, with our L'Oreal fellows and our Mason fellows, the support and funding that we provided through those awards, without that funding, they wouldn't have been able to do niche or very specific high level research. So just the fact that they're able to use these funds towards not just completing their research, but launching their careers. And when we hear back from them, how impactful and beneficial, not just the funding and the awards, but the sense of community, the mentoring, the networks, the sense of community and belonging that we're building through all of our programs. All of those are measures of success. We're seeing elements of all three of these programs replicated throughout the country. Again, as Jesse mentioned, those best practices shared through our convenings and our events. So again, those are indicators as well for us. So really impact and benefit. And most of the time we get that from the recipients and participants of these programs. But in addition, we're also being asked to collaborate with other agencies, other nonprofits, other leaders in the STEM education community to work with them to help them build their programs. So Lytle Hill specifically came to AAAS because of our history and our reputation with diversity efforts for women in particular. So those are, I would say, our measures of success in addition to our own internal and external evaluation.
That's great, thank you. Dr. Hellman, as you mentioned as well, the work of the Committee on Women in Science, Engineering, and Medicine, is in large part about lessons learned, again, developing and sharing those recommendations for best practices. So could you touch on some highlights for us as well? You mentioned some specific reports, but anything in that arena in terms of, what you've seen work well.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. I also want to just give a pitch that if anybody wants to talk more about this, we have time and effort to speak more in depth to anybody looking for, knowing what works. We're happy to come to talk about our reports at any time. I guess I want to start maybe with the hard part, which is to say sort of where there's still opportunities to improve, and give a caveat to a lot of the research we do, which is that unfortunately so much of the research, almost all of it actually, has focused on middle-class white women at R1 universities. And so that's really what our research base tells us right now, is how to improve the situation for middle-class white women at R1 universities, which isn't to say that, that not all of these practices can translate into other contexts and, could be helpful for women of color. It could be helpful at smaller institutions, at community colleges, at, minority serving institutions, et cetera. Unfortunately, that's just not where the research is. And so I would argue one thing that the committee advocates for is, for more research on these areas to sort of fill our gaps in our knowledge. So as far as, that with that important caveat, I just want to say that, there are a lot of things that institutions, particularly of higher education, can do to improve both the recruitment, retention, and advancement of women in STEM. So things, first, I think the important thing is to know your context. So it's hard to know what you need to improve without diagnosing your problem. And so we've heard, stories from institutions where they've, decided they needed to recruit all these women graduate students, and that was their problem, is recruitment. So they invested a ton of resources into recruiting from, a diverse pool. And it was only, many years later that they realized that they hadn't actually graduated a single woman within this department. And so they had spent all this effort recruiting when really their problem was retention. And so I think first, it's so important to look at your data. It's so important for an institution to know where your problems are. So if for example, at an individual department level, to know, what are the demographics, and disaggregated by both gender and race, ethnicity, of knowing, who not only your students are, who your faculty are they graduating, are they staying, are they getting tenure, are they advancing into leadership positions? This is all important data to know, so you can really know where you need to focus your energy and where you should devote resources. And then once you've sort of diagnosed your problem, if you have a recruitment problem, there's all sorts of things to do, like, holding structured interviews, writing your job descriptions in more of a broad way that appeal to a broader pool of applicants, investing resources into building relationships with communities you maybe don't traditionally reach. There's the report lists, many recruitment efforts. As far as retention goes, there's a lot as far as, devoting resources to, faculty engagement, to making sure all of the faculty and students are aware of all of the department resources rather than having it come through siloed information. And really being transparent about every decision that's being made, why those decisions are being made, and rather than just coming out with a new policy or a new program. Sometimes these may be negative news, but for people involved that are your faculty or your students, they want to know why these decisions are being made, and sometimes there's more buy-in to know. To be completely transparent about, again, who is making these decisions, why they're being made, et cetera. And then as far as advancement, we know that sponsorship programs are really effective to advance women in STEM into leadership positions, giving women the spotlight, putting them into positions, into roles that are highly visible, and sort of setting expectations that for women that they have a life outside of work, that this concept of work devotion, that women can have, that it's not expected that their life is going to necessarily be their job. If you set that expectation that the job is your entire life, then you'll start losing people. Women will leave, because the truth is, many of us have families and other, caregiving responsibilities and things to worry about. And so if the expectation is set that, work is your only priority, then either women will start leaving or they'll start trying to cover up their own personal lives. And we see this in the research. So I think it's really important to sort of, set norms and expectations that are inclusive for all individuals. And then once, some of these initiatives have been adopted, I think to sustain them, there's, we need committed leadership at all levels, so that it's not a single individual advocating for these things, but that sort of, it's leadership writ large, and so that it doesn't, these initiatives aren't at the whims of a single individual if they leave, and that hopefully doesn't mean that the entire program or all the initiatives sort of fall apart. You need dedicated financial and human resources. So instead of asking faculty to do this as a side job, but actually giving them rewards and awards for doing some of this work, for creating inclusive environments, for mentoring, for doing things like sponsorship. That's really, really critical. And then I think the, sort of accountability and data collection piece is so important. So once you've started, putting these initiatives in place, are you holding yourself accountable by collecting data and making sure that you're making progress? Are we seeing that these initiatives are only benefiting white women? And if that's the case, then perhaps going back and evaluating, doing climate surveys and sort of evaluating what your faculty of color need, what your students of color are needing, and making sure that you're being as inclusive as possible and not just benefiting, a single group. And like I said, just adopting an intersectional approach that from the beginning, that the expectation can't be that you're only, trying to promote white women and that's your ideal version or your version of what a woman looks like in these fields. But we really need to adopt an intersectional approach, thinking from the beginning of, thinking about the most marginalized in our communities and lifting them up and putting them, sort of in places where they're able to make, decision making and form some of the higher leadership decisions, and being in the room and all these discussions and making sure they're respected and that everyone is included and valued.
Dr. Diaro, and to you for a similar question. And could you tell us a little bit more about kind of other lessons learned or successes that you've seen here from the advanced program at NSF as it's funded, proposals for organizational change over the years?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Alex. You basically laid out everything that I would have said. And so now I can say something else in addition to that. Her point is that you need to have data to understand what your issues are, and in order to identify what the systemic issues might be that are causing the differentials in your data by gender or by race, ethnicity, etc. And so the lesson that to add to that is that data itself is not enough. You need to actually actively monitor it and investigate what it means. And so, for example, if your data is showing that at your university you have a longer time in rank for female faculty in 6 out of your 10 STEM departments, that alone does not tell you how to fix your problem. You have to still investigate deeper and unpack that data to identify what the issues are. So what are the 4 departments that don't have this problem doing well might also help you because they're working in the same system as those other 6. What are those 6 departments doing that is making it more challenging for women to decide to go up for promotion, etc. Because the issues might be very different, and they might be very different for different populations. So for women of color, for example, they may not be getting the nod that other people are getting in their department that it's time to go up for promotion just because they don't have the same network as the white men in that department. And the issue might be different for the white women, when it might be that they are waiting too long until they have a perfect portfolio instead of a good enough portfolio. And those 2 reasons for your longer time in rank would require different solutions to resolve. And so you need to be able to disaggregate your data and investigate them further in order to know what strategies you should implement, right? So that is definitely one lesson learned, and absolutely the intersectional look at the data. For example, in my example I just gave, the faculty of color might have a very different experience than white faculty. And you wouldn't know that unless you asked them or surveyed them or had focus groups, in addition to collecting your overall data about time and rank. So this data is very important. And that's been recognized actually as an important lever for change, is that you have to have this data in order to know that there's a problem in the first place. And so the sea change effort at AAAS that Shirley Balcom and others are implementing is an effort to recognize institutions that are making progress towards equity by gender and race, ethnicity, by collecting data and they are going to give out recognition awards. They've already given out 3 institution-wide recognition awards for institutions that are doing a good job at collecting data and using the data. And so that Sea Change initiative is going to recognize institutions for their equity work in terms of collecting data and using it. And so that's an example of a lesson learned about the importance of data in order to make change, and particularly systemic change. So I think that is a good example of another spreading of ideas that Advances has worked hard to develop.
Setting goals for programs such as these, how you measure progress toward those goals, what you've seen work in practice, and then kind of how you look at sustaining some of those successes. So, we're very short on time here. I'd like to wrap up by just asking each of you to very quickly address a final kind of more forward-looking question here, which is sort of where we go from here and how you see the STEM program at AAAS kind of building on some of the existing work you've been doing, or how some of these lessons learned that you've shared with us will influence the trajectory of the program.
So thank you all for mentioning Sea Change and intersectionality. So I just wanted to mention briefly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but when you look at the issues supporting girls and women in STEM, the issues are different at different education levels and across different sectors. So I, started out in industry, in the academic area, and now in a nonprofit, work for the federal government, and the issues are very different across all of those sectors. We know from the research that at the K-12 level for women, it's about, for girls, it's about self-efficacy, it's access to quality science education and instruction. At the higher education level, it's issues of microaggressions, negative climates, and those carry over to the professional careers. And so I think we really need to focus on, in addition to institutional change, looking at those specific populations. For example, when you mention women of color, we have no data, and this is something that I'll be working on next, which is an extension of my work as a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the National Institute of Justice. So when you look at the area of forensics, it's overrepresented by women in general, but there's a lack of women of color specifically and underrepresented students. So one research question that I'll be addressing over the coming months is, what can we learn from the overrepresentation of women in forensic science in general that we can probably extrapolate or extract to support underrepresented students and professionals in general in forensic sciences. And literally the only data that they had was the publication that I did as a fellow. And that's sad that we have no data and no research on women of color or underrepresented minorities in the area of forensic sciences. So that's just one example to say that we really need to look at these specific targeted populations where there's an extreme low representation for women of color, particularly, and answering some of those research questions to help frame our next generation of programs and initiatives.
Thank you. That's good. Dr. Hellman, what about you? You mentioned in particular some new programs related to the pandemic and some of the changes we've seen in 2020. So I'd ask to, what specific issues will the committee be looking at next?
Yeah, well, I feel like Dr. Wagstaff just set me up so perfectly to talk. We have actually an ongoing consensus study that'll be out early next year addressing the underrepresentation of women of color in tech. And so I think, as Dr. Wagstaff mentioned, specifically focusing on these fields where we see very low representation of women, particularly for women of color, trying to focus our energy and our efforts there. The committee for addressing the underrepresentation of women of color in tech has taken sort of a unique approach. And that since we know that there's a dearth of data on this, and there's just not a lot of literature, that they, as part of the way to gather information, they held a series of workshops where they sort of publicly gathered information, brought people there who were sort of on the ground doing this work, and either maybe haven't had a chance to publish it yet, or just won't get around to publishing it, to really talk about what they're seeing works and how they're bringing women of color into these fields and advancing them into these fields. So I think the committee certainly focusing on the more marginalized people within our population. I think the committee's done great work to advance white women in STEM. We've seen great progress in many, many fields. But I think it's time to focus on other marginalized identities. Certainly like I said, the ongoing work focusing on how the pandemic will impact, women in their careers, that will be ongoing work. This fast track study will be out in the beginning of next year, and it won't even provide recommendations because we just won't have the data to be able to say what you should be able to do. And so it'll be an analysis of what's currently out there, and just thinking through what are specific findings, what are things that institutions of higher education should be thinking through, during these times for women in STEM. But I think that work will likely continue far past that committee's work, because we'll probably see, the detriments from this pandemic for many years to come for women in STEM. So I imagine that will be another area of focus for the committee. And then we're also moving in, we have a new consensus study that just launched, focusing on minoritized populations in clinical trials. And so how do we have, more inclusive, how do we create fewer health disparities for individuals? How can we be more inclusive within our clinical research and our clinical trials to make sure that, these trials are representative of what the population looks like? So, doing a bit more work and working on health disparities. So a lot of work upcoming that I think will be really exciting.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Diaz, the same question to you to wrap us up here. What is next for the advanced program at NSF?
Thank you. Yeah, so the advanced program is looking at supporting more and more adaptation of the promising strategies that have been developed by advanced grantees. So we're making awards to not just universities and colleges, but also to professional societies and other nonprofit organizations that impact those with academic careers. And so that is a next step. And we have also very purposefully added a focus on intersectionality, because as Alex mentioned, the portfolio in advance has leaned towards understanding issues for white women in academia more than other individuals. And so the proposals that come into advance now are expected to be intersectional in perspective. So looking at gender, but then also looking at other social identities, including race, ethnicity, but also LGBTQ and other social statuses that might impact the experience that individuals have in their academic careers. And so we expect that our portfolio will continue to add to what we know in important ways, while we're supporting the adaptation of some promising strategies in more institutions and into more organizations. And I do also want to suggest that in general, for programs that are looking at diversity issues, that some attention to systemic issues within programs might be a logical next step. So while we have programs that provide student support services, or maybe such as summer bridging programs or something like that, some of that effort could be directed to addressing the underlying issues for why you need that bridging program in the first place. And if we can invest some time and effort into the systemic changes, that we could potentially have longer term impact for all those involved, not just the students that are in that summer program, but all the students that come after them and experience the same educational system that they were in that resulted in the need for a summer program. So if we can think more systemically about including systemic change in what we do, I think we can make even more progress.
Thank you all so much. With that, it's a great note to end on, because that is all the time that we have. So I'd like to just thank all of our panelists again for all of your insight. It's been really fascinating. Dr. Wagstaff, Dr. Hellman, Dr. Diaz, we really appreciated you being with us. And to all those who were listening to our conversation today, thank you from myself and from the Smithsonian. We appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you so much. That was a fascinating discussion about the ongoing work behind all those diversity initiatives. Next up, we'll have a fireside chat titled Sheila Minor Huff, a trailblazing scientist and hidden figure no more, featuring Dr. Michelle Sims Burton and Sheila Miner Huff. We're in for a real treat.
Hello, Miss Sheila Miner Huff. It is so gracious to have you join us today to talk about your 35 career as not only a biologist with the Smithsonian and then other agencies at the federal government, but often as a sole African American woman conducting the kind of research and doing the kind of work that you did as a scientist. So first of all, a couple of years ago, a photograph circulated throughout social media and in other media. And it was a photograph of a group of men with one lone woman, and it was a result of a meeting of scientists. And through internet sleuthing, someone identified you in that photograph. And since then, attention has been focused on you as now another hidden figure. So can you tell us about that photograph and then perhaps talk about your career and how you got started as a scientist?
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. And one of the things that I would like to say to the audience, it is never too late. I'm honored to be here. I ended up being known as hashtag Sheila Miner Huff 2 years ago. I didn't even know what a hashtag was. I did not even know what Twitter was. To make a long story short, in 1971, I attended the first international conference on the biology of whales. At the end of the conference, a group photograph was made of all the attendees. The photograph was in black and white. It was in 1971. All of the men, the male scientists, were named and acknowledged, except for me. And a young lady was doing research. She put the photograph on Twitter, and the photograph went viral. I think I had about it went viral. And finally, I was identified through a previous employer.
Thank you so much. That's absolutely amazing how we make contributions to a particular field and we don't know at that historical moment the contribution that we're making. And then years later, something like that happens, a photograph emerges. But, I want you to share with our audience what it meant for you to be Black and woman and in the hard sciences, and particularly this historical moment when we're talking about STEM and the push for more women in STEM. So we know that some way, somehow in your childhood, that fostered your desire for being in the hard sciences. So give us some insight into that path that you took from childhood to adulthood. How did you get into the hard sciences in the historical moment that you engaged in the hard sciences?
I've always been interested in biology. As a child, I would go out and collect falling leaves. I would look up at the sky. I loved nature. I've always loved nature. When I was 10 years old, I got a microscope. I made slides. I entered science fairs. I did science projects, even though I went to segregated schools in the District of Columbia. I never let anyone take away my passion and my desires. I always knew that I was good at the sciences. It was fun. It was not a hassle. And my parents, my teachers encouraged me. I had an excellent education in the hard sciences, chemistry, physics, and biology. And then when I went to American University, I continued the hard sciences during laboratory work. Sometimes people would stare at me and question my abilities, but I did not let anyone steal my passion. I say this with pride. I never felt inferior intellectually.
I love to hear that, because we know that as a professional woman, a Black woman in particular, in a lot of fields, there is a minefield to negotiate. So what I want you to do now is reflect on your career and share with us the impact that you had, some of the significant contributions that you made to the federal government throughout your 35-year career as a scientist.
Some of the things that I did, I wrote or contributed to environmental impact statements. I considered myself to be the fixer and the mediator between difficult subjects. I helped principals and decision makers make informed decisions. I helped them come up with alternatives to their proposed action. I listened to feedback from other scientists and from the public. This is our planet. This is our Earth. We must save our resources. And whether people recognize my achievements or not, I knew that I was working to try to save the resources that we have, or to minimize human impacts.
Now, it came to my attention that you served in a very significant position during the Carter administration. Can you share that event with us?
Yes. I was hosting a meeting, and again, this is just a descriptor, with all Caucasian males, what we call alpha males. I was not intimidated. It was my meeting, and I was working for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. One of the gentlemen there told me that he was a friend of the Assistant Secretary at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks at the Department of the Interior. And this new Assistant Secretary wanted to diversify his staff. So I was hired as a special assistant for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And together, I traveled throughout the United States. We were proponents of the National Environmental Policy Act, and I am very proud of my accomplishments. Also, in 1979, I became one of the first women to be a certified wildlife biologist through the Wildlife Society. And I am very proud of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're very proud of that as well. Throughout any career, we have our highs and our lows. And I would like for you to share with us, what were some of the highs that you experienced as a scientist?
I think I want to talk about the lows first.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because the lows came before the highs came. Is that okay? Because of the lows, it helped me stay in the field to achieve. There were many times, Dr. Michelle, I thought of giving up. I just can't do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm worn out. I'm not acknowledged. And I was worn out. One of the lows was I presented a research paper at the American Society of Mammalogists at the University of Montana. And the research that I had conducted was with the Smithsonian Institution on the Poplar Islands on the Chesapeake Bay. And unfortunately, I did not get to present all of my data. And in front of this audience of alpha males, PhDs, they cut off my microphone. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. I cried. And then I had to reset myself. And what I would like to say to other ladies and people in science, reset yourself. I made a mistake. I learned from my mistakes, and that never happened again. Then as far as the highs, what I did was I rewarded myself. I kept journals of my achievements. Hopefully, I will leave an impression upon future scientists. My grandmother used to tell me that if she could accomplish things, that I could accomplish things. If you look at some of these photographs, you will see me in situations that I never ever thought that I would be in. I was expected to be stared at like an endangered species. And perhaps I was. I had my passion and my interest. I knew my self-worth, and I just persevered. Okay.
I think persevering is like crucial. So can you give some advice to girls and women who want to pursue a career in science?
Yes. I would say, number one, keep a journal of your accomplishments that you make every day, as well as those objectives that you did not achieve. Then write a mitigation plan like you do in the sciences. What are the alternatives that I can take next day, next week to achieve my goals? Always have a plan B. Also, in keeping track of your work, you're doing it for yourself. Also, write down who is the most important person that you are seeking approval from. Are you doing the research for yourself or to get the approval or recognition from other people? Or are you doing your research and pursuing your career to enter data into the universe? And as you can see, even though I retired in 2005, at last, I have been recognized, and I would not change anything. Be who you are with dignity. Work for yourself, young ladies. Know your self-worth. You are worthy.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm always thinking of a young adult book with you, nonfiction book. So we're going to have to work on that to make sure that you remain within the historical record and within the imagination of all women. Sheila Miner Huff, I want to thank you for joining us today for this fireside chat. I want to thank everyone at the Smithsonian for making this opportunity possible for all of us. And thank you everyone who joined us to engage in this event. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sims Burton, and thank you, Sheila Miner Huff, for sharing your amazing story. Now we'll go straight into our next panel, Building Galaxies, Collaboration as a Model for Centering Women's Stories at the National Air and Space Museum, where we will hear from my colleagues, Rebecca Lundgren, an education specialist at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, Dr. Emily Martin, research physical scientist at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, and Dr. Emily Margolis, Curator at the National Air and Space Museum and Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. Also, this session will be followed by a Q&A with our panelists. Please submit your questions in the box below the video, and I'll hand it over to Rebecca now.
Welcome to Building Galaxies, collaboration as a model for centering women's stories at the National Air and Space Museum. I'm Becca Lundgren, and together with my colleagues, Drs. Emily Martin and Emily Margolis, we're going to discuss how we center collaboration as a model for amplifying and uplifting women in science. We are first going to individually share, very briefly, how each of us works with stories of women in science, and then have a short panel discussion about our intersecting roles when collaborating, as well as how we see collaboration as the key to a thriving and inclusive women's history culture at work. I'm going to act as the moderator a little bit, as well as share my own perspectives as part of this collaboration model. So in that vein, I'll be going first. I'm a museum educator and interpreter here at the National Air and Space Museum, where we spark curiosity and empower learners to imagine the possibilities of our future. This is a future where we collaborate deeply with our colleagues and audiences to create experiences where everyone feels welcome and connected, especially women and girls. At NASM, we have explored what it means for women and girls to create STEM identity, and it starts early and in very simple ways. By creating collaborative learning environments, as well as promoting and amplifying women in science as role models, we can begin to develop STEM identity for those who may not feel like science is for them. As an educator, my role is to help foster this STEM identity and support the development of skills that allow all learners to thrive. Asking questions such as, do people feel welcome here? Do they have their voices heard? And am I actually listening? As well as thinking deeply. These are just a few ways that I help support our learners in thinking critically and affecting change. It is necessary to develop learning and collaboration environments where women, especially women at the intersections of race, class, disability, and other identities, thrive if we hope to see the full possibilities of our future. Now, building this environment means acknowledging that this work is not done in a silo. By creating close collaborative environments with other educators, historians, and scientists, as well as the participants in each of my programs, we can begin to model internally the type of work that those of us in museums do and should strive for: co-creation and seeding of power, opening of space, and growing of respect and trust. So now you're going to hear from my two colleagues, Drs. Emily Martin and Emily Margolis. Emily Martin, you're up first.
Thanks, Becca. As Becca said, I'm Emily Martin, and I'm a research physical scientist in the Center for Earth and Planetary Studies at the National Air and Space Museum. And my work almost exclusively involves performing original scientific research across our solar system. But I'm also really focused on the role I can play in changing the perception of what a scientist can look like. Many planetary scientists have a background in geology, and in the 40 years that we've been collecting these data, only now are women and men earning PhDs in geology at an equal rate. But only 16% of women hold jobs as college professors. And in these same 40 years that we've been collecting data, 6% total of geoscience PhDs have been awarded to Black, Indigenous, or people of color. So many women before me in my relatively new field of planetary science were mostly white and didn't seem to make a lot of noise about being a woman. They worked really hard, mostly silently, hoping that they would be left alone to be curious and to discover and to solve problems and to just do their science. But this silent chipping away at this glass ceiling by women who came before me in planetary science has meant their success, but also their erasure from our idea of what planetary scientists look like. And this is especially true of Black, Indigenous, and women of color. Now, oceans and cold, icy moons in our solar system was 100% of the reasons I even thought to go get a PhD. And a couple of years ago, I had a really embarrassing moment when a New York Times article introduced me to the woman who made a discovery that laid the groundwork for thinking about oceans on moons in our solar system, especially the outer solar system. And I'm realizing that I know so little about my foremothers that I can only wonder at how my path could have been different. I'm using my embarrassing realization as the spark that really started to inform how I learn and share stories of my foremothers, combat erasure, and actively work towards changing STEM by contributing to change what a scientist really can look like by knowing what they did look like. And so now I want to give the floor to my colleague, Dr. Emily Margolis.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Becca. I'm Emily Margolis, and I'm the Curator of American Women's History here at the National Air and Space Museum, and the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. I work to uncover and amplify stories of women in the history of aviation, spaceflight, astronomy, and planetary science. I aim to use historical narratives to support a culture of inclusivity in these traditionally male-dominated fields. So how do we know about the past? Through stories passed down in our families and communities, through photo albums shared around the kitchen table, through documents filed and organized in archives and libraries, and through objects in our attics and our museums. Historians know that each of these sources offers but a partial view of what came before, and one that is framed through the eyes of a person or people with the power to record and preserve history. That means that their values shape what we know about the people and events they describe. We know that in the United States, the scientific labor of women, as well as Black, Indigenous, and other peoples of color, has been systematically devalued. This leads to a double erasure in the field or laboratory and in the historical record. I work to combat this erasure by taking a more expansive view of what it means to do science. I look for evidence of people creating, sharing, and applying useful knowledge, people engaging with science, even though they might not have been acknowledged as scientists in their time. Locating, understanding, and sharing these stories is not the work of historians alone. Through collaboration with Becca and Emily and our other colleagues at the museum, I have learned to imagine new audiences and applications for these historical narratives. Together, we can use these stories to challenge society's implicit biases about who can contribute to science and who can be a scientist. To make the future female, we need to show that the past is female too.
Thank you both so much for sharing a little bit about how you work. It's always a pleasure to be in conversation with both of you. So now we're going to have a short discussion where we have a few questions we want to ask each other. These are questions that you probably thought of before in your own work, and you might have some assumptions about how we might answer them or who even might answer them. But the purpose of our discussion today is to show that we all have a stake in answering all of these questions in our work through collaboration around amplifying and uplifting women in science. And the first question is one of the most important ones for me, and that is the role our identities play in the work that we do. When choosing to collaborate around women's history, one thing that needs to be addressed up front is who is in the room and why. As a white cis woman, I am conscious of the fact that collaborating is using my power and privilege, and who I collaborate will benefit from that choice. I am also very aware that at the National Air and Space Museum, we're still working on making our staff and those we can collaborate with more diverse in terms of race, ethnicity, ability, and even more identities. And so I'm often making the decision to collaborate with colleagues while simultaneously advocating for a work environment to be more inclusive and for more colleagues to be hired from different backgrounds. Now that's how my identity manifests in my work and how it affects the way that I uplift and amplify women in STEM. But I'm really curious about how my colleagues here feel about their identities playing a role in their work. So Emily Martin, how does your identity play a role in your work, especially in how you collaborate?
So this was a really interesting question that the three of us were talking about in preparation for this event. And my white cis privilege has really meant that I've only relatively recently become aware of the challenges that are faced by many of my colleagues. And so I've really been spending time trying to figure out how to refocus my privilege to help make change happen. And so, you know, one of the things that's a challenge about this is that my duties are almost exclusively based in performing original research. And so trying to find space in there where I can take my place in my community and help use my privilege for that change. And so I really shifted my focus to trying to learn more about who fought to work in STEM, who's been erased from that story, who has been kept out of that experience of being part of STEM, and spending time really educating myself about these stories and using that as a way to refocus how I can change and improve my recruitment practices for things like interns and research assistants and colleagues. You know, how am I building my research teams and really refocusing on myself and how I'm making choices in my own research programs, and really trying to use my time to continue my education and to really learn about the inequities that maybe I haven't heard of before, because my privilege has sort of allowed me to ignore these stories and really try and take responsibility for doing a better job of understanding other people's experiences and starting to hold myself accountable and hold other people accountable that I work with.
Thank you so much for sharing, Emily. I definitely resonate with those experiences as well. Emily Margolis, I'd love to hear how your identity plays a role in your work too.
Thanks, Becca and Emily, for your thoughtful answers. I've really enjoyed talking through these issues together. And, you know, I should just say that as a historian, it's so fundamental to the work that we do that we acknowledge the ways in which gender, identity, race, class, ability, and other identities intersect to shape people's experiences, but that we can't just leave that for our work and not apply it to ourselves. And so my experience and perspectives have been shaped by the power and privilege I have as a white cis woman. And in order for me to write inclusive histories and represent the diversity of experiences of people who identify as women, it's really essential to me that I start to use my privilege to listen and amplify rather just than record and reinterpret. So I really don't want to be a gatekeeper. I want to leave space for women to be a part of telling their own stories whenever possible. And so that's a new level of collaboration that I'm looking forward to making a part of my practice.
I really appreciate this idea of recognizing that we can be gatekeepers through the way that we manifest our privilege and the power that holds. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's so critical to model this inclusivity and this conversation in the work that we're doing, because it manifests in everything else we're doing too. So this is the first conversation we always have when we collaborate, and it'll happen every single time thereafter. And whenever we are collaborating or having conversations about what we're doing, we're not doing it in a vacuum. We're doing it for our audiences, which includes us, but isn't just us. We're not a self-serving institution here at the National Air and Space Museum. We're public service. And oftentimes as an educator, I have people come to me and say, well, what about audiences? You must be an expert. Guess what? Everybody can be an expert in audiences and has a stake in who we decide to engage with. And that's one of my tenets of collaboration, is making sure we are all at the table when we decide how we're engaging and with who. So Emily Margolis, I'm really interested in your take as a historian. What audiences are you connecting with, and why is that important when collaborating around women's history and science?
Thanks, Becca. Well, one of my favorite things about being a public historian is the broad reach of our scholarship and all of its many applications. I like to think of public history as applied history, history that has the power to inform the present moment and shape the future. And so my thinking about who the audience is for women's history is really broad and has been shaped by the conversations that the three of us have had. So of course, historians are trained to write for other historians and to write for students. And so that's an important priority to me, but I'm also very much interested in reaching out to girls and young women and offering them historical role models that they might not find elsewhere. Sort of getting to Emily Martin's point about understanding your foremothers. And it's a really clear path to the professions when you can say, here's someone who came before you and they did it, so you can do it too. But along the same lines, I'm really interested in also engaging boys and young men in this conversation as well, because it's really important that as everyone together is creating the next generation of STEM workforce, that everyone recognizes that science is better when it's inclusive and everyone has a seat at the table. And similarly, I'm really interested in reaching out to scientists and helping use the past to help them understand this perpetual problem of underrepresentation of women in STEM fields, and hopefully using the lessons from the past as a blueprint for change moving forward.
Absolutely. It really resonates with me that you're talking about this being everyone's responsibility. Whenever we talk about women in science, oftentimes the first people who are asked are women in science. And so it's great to hear a commitment, and I love our conversations around this, to know that it's everyone's responsibility to seek out, amplify, and engage with these stories and with the women in science that we all know today too. Now, these stories, we have so many of them, of course, at the National Air and Space Museum, many of them very famous in the history books. That's not what we're talking about today. You can go to our wonderful website and eventually visit us to hear more about them. But most of these stories have frankly been stories about men, mostly white, though there have been some women. And one of those examples is actually Bessie Coleman, the first Black and Native American woman to earn her pilot's license. We celebrate and uplift her story, and we're very honored to do so here at the Air and Space Museum. And we also recognize that there are many other stories that we're not telling. That's why I'm excited to have colleagues like Emily Margolis on the team, because you are working to uncover a lot of those stories. But like I said, it's all of our responsibility to think about the stories we want to tell. So Emily Martin, I'm really interested as we continue to combat erasure and uplift stories of women in science. What stories are you interested in hearing and focusing on?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question for me because I identify as a scientist, and scientists pride themselves on their objectivity. And so sort of at a surface layer, it shouldn't matter who's doing the science, right? Because data is data and data is objective, and that should be the end of the story. But fundamentally, science can't happen without the people who are doing it. And we can't create a more diverse and equitable STEM field and community unless we start to encourage and help diversify those communities. And I think that can happen the more we provide stories to people who are considering a STEM career, or to people who are just considering what they want to be when they grow up. I think if I had known about real women, real people, frankly, who were scientists when I was growing up, I might have considered a career in STEM prior to my college graduation. I'm really late to this party. And I do think that there really would have been a really different path for me moving forward if I had really understood that not only scientists are real people, but that scientists come from diverse backgrounds. And so I think this is really getting back to this idea of how important it is for scientists to really own and understand what their past was, what their past looks like, for better or for worse, and really use that as a way of trying to drive forward better policies and new and improved ways of thinking towards understanding what the sources of these inequities are, to really try and produce a more equitable future for STEM. And, this really isn't the conversation about, the data that we have that proves that diverse voices are critical for improving our thinking. But I think for me, that really starts with learning about our foremothers and sharing those stories with the scientific community.
That makes so much sense. Really recognizing that it is a privilege to not pay attention to these things. And there's been so many amazing scientists who've been doing this advocacy work already. And it's really great to collaborate with scientists and historians like you who are doing this same advocacy work here at the Air and Space Museum. And I also really like that you were talking about kind of the women in science who are all around us. It makes me think of Dr. Ariana Curtis's talk, the curator of Latinx studies at the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. She did a TED Talk in 2018 about the idea that representation matters, and not just for extraordinary women, but women all around us. And it's critical to center and uplift those stories too. And that helps reframe about what a scientist even looks like. When I think of women and girls creating STEM identity, that's actually where I want to go first. I get so excited when I get to share the story of Bessie Coleman, but I hope they also know about the scientists within their own community that they can engage with and see as role models and be inspired by as well. Well, that's actually all the time we have to have this conversation, because of course we have so many other times to discuss how we collaborate, not just during this wonderful symposium, but in our normal work today. So we hope that you all got a little sense of our ideas around collaboration when it engages with women's history and science specifically, but also just how to create more inclusive work environments in general that then manifest in different ways in the way we interact with the public. So I want to thank my colleagues, Emily Margolis and Emily Martin, for joining me in conversation today. And I want to ask all of you, what collaboration strategies have you used to create more inclusive and meaningful spaces, particularly when engaging around stories of women in science? We'd like to hear from you, because you're part of us building our galaxy too. We're only just 3 stars, so we're all in this together. Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you all again for joining us in our conversation around collaborating while we uplift and amplify women's stories in science. So we actually have some time for questions from all of you, and this is a conversation. So if we answer some of your questions and you want to follow up or make any comments, please add them to the chat. Also, at the end of our questions and answer period today, we're going to take our Q&A onto Twitter. You can join us at Airspace Pod, that's Airspace Pod on Twitter, to continue asking questions and be part of the conversation with us. So we actually got a question during our panel discussion for Emily Margolis. And this is from Archie. Archie asks, could you expand on your interest in uncovering scientists who weren't recognized as being scientists?
Great, thank you so much for that question. I think one of the challenges that we heard about in the first week of the AWHI symposium was the ways in which labor structures in the sciences can obscure the work of women. Oftentimes women and also people of color are assigned to particular kinds of jobs that don't have the title, prestige, and compensation of scientists, for example. And as a result, the kinds of work that they are doing, which is incredibly important, is often not flagged as high status or important, and sometimes doesn't make it into the archives. And so one of the challenges is how to find individuals who created useful knowledge but whose names have not been attached to certain documents. And there are ways that historians can work around that by using other sources, including oral histories and also the material record.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'm really excited to continue to see how your projects shape up. I think we're going to hear some amazing stories with you as our colleague. We have another question, a little bit about projects that we have done or that we envision from Sam Theriault. So the question is, what types of projects do you envision for NASM that not only uplift and amplify women's stories, but also allow especially women to benefit in turn in their own work from collaboration with SI? So I actually would love to hear Emily Martin's take on anything that you envision, especially in allowing women to be part of the process. I know we've talked a little bit, Emily Martin, about your role with internships before and things like that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I was gonna lean back on my focus on internships because that is one of the places where I have already seen where I can make the most change. I've been at the museum long enough now where I've had multiple years of interns, and being able to see, most of them are young women, being able to see their eyes really be opened up to what the field can look like, not just in terms of representation, but just in terms of giving them a welcoming and supportive environment for them to explore the idea of what a science career looks like and feels like, really dispels a lot of the mythologies that they sort of grow up with as a result of sort of having this picture in their mind of what a scientist is and who a scientist is and what academia means for them. So I've really tried hard to focus on how I can affect sort of the generations that are coming after me, really kind of keeping that ladder down on the ground floor, right? And continuing to help reach and bring women up and other underrepresented minorities. And part of that has to do with how the museum connects with other programs who help recruit students that are maybe, that aren't beyond our reach, but they're designated programs who are really skilled at bringing in underrepresented students into our programming so that we really can engage them in scientific projects. So I'm still really focused on trying to help those students that I can still reach, and I can engage them in my active research projects, which I think is the best training ground.
That's awesome to hear. I've worked with many of Emily's interns in the past, and I really love the community that you create with your internships. I think it's so important to remember that we're all, no matter what part of our career, part of the science community and part of the process. And so honoring that they are doing great work and they get to be recognized for that, I think has been really great to see. We have a few more questions coming in. And as a reminder, if we don't get to your questions right now, you can join us on Twitter at AirspacePod to continue the conversation. We'll be online right after this for about an hour. But I have a question from Erin that I think is really interesting. Have you found that your supervisors have been supportive of your efforts to be more inclusive in the histories/stories that you tell, especially stories about women in color? I'd like to start off with saying that there is an intense effort happening at the National Air and Space Museum to critically analyze who we are engaging with, whose stories we're amplifying, and why we're amplifying them. And so my direct supervisor has definitely been supportive in that effort, especially as my work on our Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion Committee has gone forward. But I'd love to hear from both of you, Emily's, how your supervisors and colleagues have supported you in that work.
Well, I'll just jump in and say that I have a pretty unique position within the Air and Space Museum in that I report both to the Aeronautics and the Space History departments, and then I also have a supervisor at the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory at the Woolbach Library. And what's great is I felt like there has been, since the first day that I arrived on the scene, there's been great interest in trying to incorporate women's stories and stories of diverse women in all of these venues, and that's been really wonderful to see that there is this demand. And I think that in some ways the demand is organic, but also responsive to our audiences, because I really feel like the movie Hidden Figures did so much for changing the public's perception about whose stories matter in the history of spaceflight and aviation. And so I whenever I talk about my job to people out on the street, they're always thinking of Katherine Johnson and Mary Jackson. And so as a result, we have a responsibility, I think, to provide as much information about these diverse stories as we can to our audiences.
And I'm going to jump in just really quickly because I think Emily's, I tell my own stories, but my stories are usually revolving around some kind of scientific problem that I'm trying to tell the story of how I think it may be happened or how we might be able to solve it. But I do want to sort of address this idea of how our supervisors kind of view this notion of, creating more diverse and equitable environments. And my experiences have been really positive, with everybody being really interested and exciting about how they can contribute and sort of using my knowledge to sort of amplify these issues with kind of my whole department, so that everybody can kind of take away from that and actually start to build their own sort of problem solving.
That's awesome to hear. Again, even just amplifying this is a collaborative experience for all of us, even with our colleagues. So we only have a little bit of time left. I know we have a few more questions. Thank you, Miriam, for your question. We're going to take your question over to Twitter. So like I said, you can join us at AirSpacePod on Twitter. And you can continue to ask questions, help answer questions. We want to hear your stories and your experiences, especially in how you collaborate with colleagues around amplifying and uplifting women's stories in science. So thank you again for having us, and we'll throw it back to our colleague, Sophia.
Thank you so much, Becca, Emily, and Emily. What a great conversation about identity and privilege in our work, and I'll definitely join along over at AirSpacePod on Twitter for more. Next up is Drawn Conclusions, Women in Scientific Illustration. We'll hear from Dr. Catherine Boyce Jacino, a fellow at Barrett Honors College at Arizona State University, and Dr. Ben Gillespie, the Arlene and Robert Kogod Secretarial Scholar for Oral History at the Smithsonian Archives of American Art. Please enjoy.
Hello, thank you all so much for digitally joining our panel. I'm really excited to talk about the history of scientific illustration, and I am joined with my colleague Ben Gillespie, and together we're going to be talking about different women involved in the history of scientific illustration. So I'm going to hand it over to Ben. Go ahead.
Thank you. There are many ways in which women have been excluded from traditional histories of science, from lack of access to training, to lack of recognition for their work, to dismissal by their peers. But one of the ways in which women are still kept out of the history of science is by the norms and categories that we use to talk about science itself. And by this, we mean that to discover more women in the history of science requires rethinking what constitutes science itself and what it means to do science. In this talk, we'd like to focus on scientific illustration, traditionally considered an activity supplementary to science itself. What has come to be called scientific illustration began as a form of data recording, most popularly as the documentation of biological species for further study. Scientists use the visual index as a means of comparison and to advance their inquiries without the specimen present. As a mode of data collection, illustration often implies the translation of data from one form to another, from timestamps and measurements to replications or representations, from patterns and densities to schematics and diagrams. Due to scientific illustration's modern roots in botanical and naturalist studies, as a practice, it was historically more available to women in domestic settings than other fields. Thinking, of course, of examples such as Maria Zabila Marion's entomological journals and Emily Dickinson's herbarium, among many others.
So recently, there's been an increased interest in the role of women in the history of scientific illustration, with a number of books, and I can think of a handful of curated exhibits on the subject. However, the focus of most of these studies is on botanical and other observational illustrations, in which the illustrator records from an observed natural phenomena. What we would like to examine in this discussion is women who work as speculative illustrators, whose work represents a synthesis of abstract principles and data into something new. Through an examination of 3 case studies of women whose work has historically been marginalized, ranging from 19th century paleontological sketches to 21st century sonification of astronomical data, we argue that scientific illustration, especially the speculative illustration, is itself a practice of scientific knowledge production, that the act of making scientific concepts legible is itself a scientific process. Furthermore, we argue by rethinking our categories of analysis, by expanding our understanding of what it means to do science, we make space in the historical narrative for women whose work has been forgotten or put aside.
Ora White Hitchcock was one of the preeminent naturalists and scientific illustrators of 19th century New England, where she was especially known for giving visual form to geological and mineralogical research alongside her husband, Edward Hitchcock. The couple were proponents of natural theology, wherein scientific discovery testified to the divine order, suggesting that all earthly things evince Christian principles. Born in 1796 just outside of Amherst, the community in which she'd make her life, Ora created an enormous body of work starting in 1818, after she was already an accomplished science teacher. From local landscapes to cross-sections of the earth, recreated mastodon skeletons, to extinct paleogenic mammals, Ora's depictions brought life to the great dug-up discoveries of her time. Later in her life, she would also travel through Western Europe and create travel diaries and new sketches based on geological inquiries and breakthroughs. As highly trained a woman scientist as Massachusetts had yet seen, Ora's diagrams for official government surveys, ink drawings for popular journals, and evocative lecture aids enriched research in classrooms through the mid-20th century. The Marquis Hitchcock contribution was the founding of Ecology, the study of fossilized tracks or footprints. Through prolific publications and lectures, the Hitchcocks evangelized learned and learning audiences as to the rich information contained in the preservation of biological activity rather than the preserved organisms themselves. Ora continued to make visually mimetic illustrations from life, as she also theorized and represented prehistoric creatures based on imprints, clues, and studied estimation. This inductive, imaginative work was fundamental in geology and paleontology for matters in which direct observation was impossible. Through these traces of the world before, the Hitchcocks reconstructed the sacred trajectory of the Earth. By illuminating the evidence at hand, Ora's illustrations laid the foundation for further scientific inquiry, translating one form of data and extrapolation into distributable form, which paralleled her approach to public life and faith, where she sought to edify as many minds, souls, and lives as possible. For this teacher-scholar, the footprints she left were meant to motivate generations of dynamic researchers.
So Ora Hitchcock's illustrations were meant to make complex, speculative concepts legible and visible to a broadly interested public. By contrast, Galina Balashova's illustrations and designs had a far more targeted audience. In her capacity as a lead designer for the Mir and Soyuz space programs, Balashova drew for an audience of engineers, architects, and politicians. Her illustrations were kept classified for most of her career, and only recently has she garnered any international attention for her work. Even as she has begun to receive academic interest in her approach, her work remains stubbornly difficult to categorize. Neither purely architectural nor purely artistic, her vivid watercolors represent a methodologically complex effort to render scientific and structural principles visible. Balashova's first encounter with illustration was her childhood interest in watercolors, which evolved into a dedicated study of architectural design at the Moscow Architectural University. In 1964, she was recruited from her position as an urban housing architect to work for the Soviet space program in the Design Bureau, where she became one of the lead interior designers, first for the Lunar Orbiting Module, which you can see here, then the Soyuz program, then Mir. She worked on a number of different design elements for each mission, from mission badge designs for the Soyuz Apollo collaboration to full blueprints of the entire Mir space station. But her most prolific body of work is the watercolor illustrations of interiors, in which she imagined and made visible a livable space for outer space. So here you can see, for example, this is a design on the left, Balashova's watercolor design for the interior of the Mir space station workspace. And then on the right, you can see the workspace as it was actually manifest physically. What interests us about Balashova is that she and her work exist in a threshold disciplinary space. Like Hitchcock and her careful drawings of ancient footprints, Balashova's designs are both interpretive and creative. They require the application of scientific principles alongside a purely speculative creativity. Precise scientific data, the necessary size of a door opening, the maximum degree of curvature, the behavior of objects and bodies in zero-gravity environments, is interpreted through artistic, imaginative rendering. In this way, the act of artistic creation itself becomes a scientific practice. Here again is another example of a watercolor, a version of the Mir interior, and the Mir interior as it was actually built. Balashova herself sees her work in this way, as she described in a short reflection on her career. Here she is speaking of the challenges she encountered in bringing her artistic background to work with engineering colleagues. Quote, "The engineers also naively imagine that an artist's work is limited to the selection of colors when developing interiors. The fact that this task also entailed coordination, dimensions, scales, encountered mystification. I could only refer to the basic structure and apparatus, appliances, and technical details as a whole. That is to say, those aspects which were practical and with which I had to develop a design approach. Together, these elements and physical necessities gave rise to the structure itself." For Balashova, as with Hitchcock, scientific illustration is inextricably linked to the production of scientific knowledge. The act of illustration is, for them, a scientific practice itself, an act by which they make principles and data visually legible. But to really think about the ways in which illustration is a creative act of interpretation, we want to extend our discussion beyond the visible, to think about how data can be translated and rendered into a variety of forms, and how this too is interpretive, creative, scientific work.
We'd like to turn our focus in this last section to the work of astronomer Wande Diaz Merced, a blind astronomer who has developed a method of rendering raw astronomical data into not visual compositions, but into sound. Sonification, the process by which raw data is rendered into audible sound waves, has existed since the early 20th century, when Hans Geiger developed the Geiger counter. But it has only been used in astronomy since the 1980s. Diaz Merced and her team have refined the process of sonification by developing software that translates astronomical data, often radio wave data, into auditory information. Here's an example that overlays sonified data with visual data from the Chandra X-ray Observatory.
Diaz Merced and her sonification, like Hitchcock and Balashova, works at the intersection of producing scientific knowledge and interpreting it. In preparation for this talk, we conducted an interview with her, which was really fantastic. And we asked her about the process of developing sonification. And she said, quote, At that moment, there was no difference between Wande creating the tool and Wande doing the science. It had to go hand in hand. Diaz Merced is clear that sonification is not merely a replacement for visual information, as in just another way for her and other visually impaired people to participate in astronomy. Rather, sonification itself is a new form of astronomical data analysis that works alongside existing visual data to offer new information. As she told us in our conversation, quote, "Sonification goes beyond that. Sonification works on the way that our perceptual system makes events salient. We listen faster than we observe, and sonification brings another way to program, conceptualize, or consider our data."
And in its separate perceptual register, sonification makes certain aspects of the data more distinctive, from different voices for charged states of carbon to differentiating phase velocities in a solar flare or extracting vector components from solar wind. Presenting the data to different senses allows for better science. Sonification not only brings scientific research to audiences for whom it had been previously foreclosed, it opens up the data itself to more rigorous and wide-ranging analysis. An analysis that has been historically diminished because it was perceived to be special treatment for differently abled scientists, rather than scientific advancement itself. Diaz Merced framed this not as catering to the disabled, but bringing science to a broader audience and reflecting critically on the bottlenecks of education and professionalization in physics and astronomy. Sonification is an example of how data representation is often circumscribed as a pedagogical supplement, while in fact, it can be a new vista for research. The ways in which data is captured and conveyed often dictate the limitations of analysis, and through critical reflection and broader accessibility, epistemic breakthroughs might not be so far away. While illustration is often seen as an addendum for the distribution of scientific knowledge, in many cases, making data legible and available is part of the advancement of science itself. And in cases of accessibility, expanding the realm of perceptual systems addressed and invited into the research process is critical for sustainability and progress across scientific fields.
By expanding our understanding of the methods by which scientific knowledge is produced and made legible, we not only expand our understanding of what it means to do science, we also expand our awareness of who is doing science. Rethinking this framework allows us to give space to women whose work has been marginalized by restrictive categorical analyses, and also makes room for accessible scientific methodologies to be scientific in their own right, rather than supplementary. To that end, we'd like to conclude with Diaz Merced's own words on what it means to do science, and we have a short clip.
It means creativity. It means freedom. It means humanity, humanism. That is what it means to do science.
Thank you so much for listening to our talk.
What an insightful, thought-provoking presentation. Thank you. Up next is a panel discussion focusing on fostering critical conversations about equity in the sciences, the Bearded Lady Project. Barbara Stouffer, Chief of Communications Programs at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, will moderate a lively discussion with 4 other panelists. The session will be accompanied by a Q&A via the chat box. Please submit your questions in the box below the video.
Hello, I'm Barbara Stouffer, Chief of Community Programs at the Natural History Museum, and I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's program, Critical Conversations about Equity in the Sciences, the Bearded Lady Project Example. The Bearded Lady Project is a project with an exhibition, film, book, and other resources about women's experience in paleontology as paleontologists. And today we'll be sharing our own experiences hosting the exhibition at 2 natural history museums, as well as more information about the project. The exhibition opened at the National Museum of Natural History in November of last year and was scheduled to run through April of this year. And I will say the photographs are still hanging in the museum, even though the museum is closed. And we hope that the exhibition can be on view for a little while longer after the museum reopens. but we don't yet know when or if that will be possible. But when. In any case, we hope you're able to see the exhibition at some point in the future. It's really a very compelling show. For today's program, we have the good fortune of having Lexi Marsh, the Bearded Lady Project creator, with us, as well as Kay Berensmeyer and Denise Sue, two renowned paleontologists also featured in the exhibition, and Jen Collins, who led programming and outreach around the exhibition during its run at the Natural History Museum. And before getting started, I want to just give you a sense of how this program will unfold. For this portion of the program, until about 4:40, you'll hear from our four speakers. We won't be able to take live questions during this portion of the program, but the speakers will be able to respond to you via the chat box. And also participating in the chat are two additional Natural History Museum staff, Siobhan Stars, the exhibit developer who led the team that installed the exhibition, and Camila Alves Suto, a postdoctoral research fellow in paleontology. So please feel free to reach out to us. At 4:45, we'll start the second part of the program, which is the workshop portion, where we'll break out into discussion groups and have a chance to talk more directly with the panelists. The workshop is a registration-only event, but it's not too late to sign up if you haven't already. To sign up, go to the Women in Science Symposium page, and which the URL is actually also being provided in the chat, and there's a button to register. And as long as you do so, by the end of this first half of the program, you should be able to secure a spot. And now, without further ado, let me introduce Lexi Jameson Marsh, founder and director of the Bearded Lady Project. Lexi, take it away.
Thank you, Barbara. It is such a pleasure to be here today. I'm thrilled to interact with you virtually. And let's talk art and science, the founding of the Bearded Lady Project. Now, if you couldn't tell by the camera in my hands, I am the artist part of the art and science collaboration. So how does a filmmaker decide to make a movie, a traveling exhibition, a book about female paleontologists wearing beards to challenge gender stereotypes? It really began with a close friendship with my friend Dr. Ellen Carano from the University of Wyoming, and she is a paleontologist. And as many children grew up, I had wanted to be a paleontologist growing up. I had heard all the stories about dinosaurs and fossils, and then of course that dream faded away and I became a filmmaker. But when I met Ellen Carano, I realized, wow, this is someone who actually was able to live my original 7-year-old dream. And I would beg her to tell me stories about her working in the field in Ethiopia. And she just had the most amazing, exciting life and seemed to be a real idol for her peers, for young women coming into the field. And it was over a dinner we had together as friends where I confided in her about the fact that I was working in a very male-dominated industry. And it was then that she told me that she felt exactly the same way I did working in her field, that she was a minority, she was spoken over during her meetings with her colleagues. And hearing her say that, seeing how successful she was, how determined she was as a scientist, absolutely broke my heart. So to lighten the mood, Ellen suggested, well, maybe the one thing I could fix is put a beard on my face, and then I'll just be like everybody else. So I went to bed that night, and then around 2 a.m, I woke up, just could not get this ridiculous image out of my head of my very accomplished paleontologist friend having to put a fake beard on to be taken seriously in the field. So I opened up my laptop, I wrote her an email that basically said, okay, great idea, but would you be willing to actually wear a beard in the field? And thankfully she said yes. This is a testament to not only Ellen, but the women who followed in her footsteps. So we've had a lot of questions. Why the beard? If you're looking to celebrate women in paleontology, to showcase their research, why are you making them wear beards? Well, of course, this started with Ellen, lightening the mood with that little joke about if I just put a beard on, I'll look like everybody else and everything will be fine. But there is a deeper meaning to this. There is this very negative stereotype that women have to break the mold. They have to break into the field. The field is not necessarily welcoming to women, people of color, people with disabilities, different genders. And so with this idea of, well, what if we take ownership of this stereotype? Now, there's so much information out there about gender inequities right now in the sciences, but the only people who really read that or focus on it are the people that are directly involved with it. By incorporating art into this discussion where a woman wearing a beard creates a visceral response, whether it's comedy, tragedy, discomfort, it really ultimately gets the conversation going. It's hard to discount this message because you see it visually in front of you. So we started very simply. Ellen was our first subject, and we were going to do a portrait and a short video to put online. But we had so much fun with the first shoot. We actually convinced other women at the field site to participate. All portraits were taken with a large format film camera taken by Kelsey Vance, a fine art photographer. And so as much as we were making fun of this stereotype, we were also showcasing women, but inserting them into a legacy that had never existed for them. So we have Ellen Carano with her mustache that she was wearing at our very first shoot. Down below, this was actually filming in Lyme Regis, where Mary Anning used to conduct her field work. And then we have Rebecca Hunt Foster with her own personal beard. So as shocking as this is actually a great way to invite people into the conversation. So when I say why the beard, this actually comes from one of our early discussions that we had at UC Berkeley, which was our second shoot overall. We were able to include over 30 women in that one shoot. And during our discussion, one of the male paleontologists said, well, why put beards on? And the reason is, as Dr. Cindy Lowy, a UC Berkeley faculty member, said, if these women weren't wearing beards, you would not be here having this conversation right now. So we've been really thrilled with the results of this. This project has gone, above and beyond what we had originally had for our concept. We have had a documentary short film, a feature-length film, a traveling exhibition that is now at the National Museum of Natural History in DC, which has really broadened our audience and brought that conversation to the forefront of more scientific community. But I would say that the real success of this is creating a community for paleontologists that might have felt alone in their field. So we have Dr. Kay Berensmeyer and Dr. Catherine Badgley during our preview exhibit at the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology in 2017. And this has created a uniting front, a representation of women that, yes, they're wearing beards, but welcome to the group. Let's learn a little bit more. So I am so happy that the project has had the success that it's had, but also that it has inspired and advocated for its participants. So thank you so much. And now I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Denise Su, Chief Academic Engagement Officer and Curator of Paleobotany and Paleoecology at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History.
Thanks so much, Lexi. Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here today. So who is a scientist? Well, I'm a scientist. More specifically, I'm a paleontologist. And even more specifically, I'm a paleoecologist. I study the ancient environments of our early human ancestors to try to figure out what they were doing and the factors that shaped our evolution trajectory. As part of my research, I go to the field and I look for fossils, which I admit is my favorite part. Now, for most of my career, I was often the only woman there. And like every paleontologist who is a woman, I have dealt with and still deal with certain assumptions about who I am, what I can do, what I'm able to accomplish. And mostly because I look like this and not like this. When a colleague of mine sent me the link to the Bearded Lady Project website, I thought immediately that this was the most clever and cheekiest way of confronting these unconscious biases. Now, Lexi talked a little bit about, why the beards, and I will tell you that that is 100% true. This photograph of me with a beard really challenged people to go beneath the surface and ask why they find this funny or ridiculous or uncomfortable or even threatening. And in participating in this project, again, to kind of follow in what Lexi had said, I really found a community of scientists who have been through the same experiences as me. And I have to tell you, it was an amazing feeling to know that you're not alone, that you have support, and that there are others who understand your experiences and your journey. And so because of that feeling, that sense of community I felt for the first time in my entire career, I brought the Bearded Lady Project to the Cleveland Museum of Natural History because I wanted to give teen girls who want to be scientists, who may be discouraged, that same sense of community. And I want to show them that they are not alone and to encourage them to pursue their love of science. We did a lot of programming. This was one of our first ones. We hosted a pizza party and a panel discussion with field-based scientists. And it was an amazing experience, not just for the girls, although there were boys there, I will say, there were boys there. It was an amazing experience, not just for girls, but also for the scientists themselves. There were lots of questions, but they were almost all variations of one question. How do you keep on moving forward when everyone around you tells you that you can't? It was an incredibly heartbreaking moment, but it also affirmed the importance of this project. We also hosted a celebration of International Girls and Women in Science Day. It was just a really fun-filled day with lots of activities from a lot of our partners in other organizations. And we also had a live Q&A with two of our entomologists who just happened to have been in Australia at that time doing field work. They're in the top picture there. And I really have to give kudos to them because they had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to participate in this program. That was in the afternoon. So this set of programming that we did around the Bearded Lady Project at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History was probably the most impactful set of programming that we've ever done. And it's all thanks to the Bearded Lady Project that we were able to really motivate, encourage these young girls and women who are so interested in science and that this is what they want to do, but they felt like they couldn't do it. And by connecting the scientists' experiences directly to them, it was an incredibly powerful moment for them. And we've gotten several responses since then that how it's really propelled them to move forward with what they would like to do. So thank you, Lexi and Ellen, for putting together this show that allows us to do this. And now I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Kay Behrensmeyer. She is the Senior Research Geologist and Curator of Vertebrate Paleontology at the Smithsonian. And she, of course, is also a Bearded Lady scientist.
Thanks, Denise. It's great to be here and part of this panel discussion. Well, my reaction when asked to be part of the Bearded Lady Project was similar to that of many other participants. Why do we need to dress up to look like men? But then I realized why. It meant joining a growing movement toward gender equity and committing to speaking out more than I had before about bias in science, and more broadly, bias as well. Have I experienced bias in my own career? Of course. But I always learn when to be hard of hearing, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg has recently been advocating, to ignore slights directed at me and persist toward my goals. I had many excellent mentors, and many of them were male, who helped me along the way. And I also had and still have wonderful, supportive colleagues across a huge spectrum of race and gender. So when I began graduate school, I was discouraged from being a field scientist because I was a woman. And this is similar to what Denise was talking about. I ignored all that good advice, not very good really, because being a field scientist was and is one of the best things about my life. I can't imagine not being free to roam the rocks, discovering and thinking, to be part of field expeditions that are like families, focused around discovery and adventure in exotic places, and sharing this experience with others, many of whom are women who were also breaking barriers and living their dreams as I was living mine. In this brief presentation, I will touch on two of the questions we ask in our Natural History Museum Bearded Lady Project exhibit about exclusion versus inclusion, to highlight what is possible when gender barriers no longer have the power to affect our choices and our lives. The first question, what is the consequence to science of leaving some people out? As Lexi showed the wonderful picture of me and my colleague and friend, Catherine Badgley. She is someone that has meant a huge amount to my life and to my career. Another bearded lady and a comrade in many, many expeditions and other experiences. She's featured prominently in the Bearded Lady Project documentary, which I hope many of you have seen. And our portraits are together in the Natural History Museum exhibit. Our friendship goes back to when both of us were in the Department of Geological Sciences at Harvard University. She was an undergrad and I was a graduate student. We both had to struggle to find our place as professional scientists. If either of us had been deflected from our goal, then we would also have missed the fun and inspiration that has come from decades of collaboration and mutual support. You can see us here in East Africa in the lower left. That was in 1974. And then the other two shots are from working together in Pakistan. And so I've been actually thinking and preparing for this panel discussion, what would my life have been like if Catherine had been left out of it? Much, much diminished. So then I also pondered this second question, what would diversity in science look like? What are we headed for? Let's think positively. And I realized that some recent examples are possible for me in my own career. And I suspect many other bearded ladies would have similar stories. This is an example of a team of scientists that is nearly 50-50 in terms of male-female ratios. Actually, there are 20 people and 11 women in this photograph. This is a group that my colleague Kate Lyons, who is the fourth from the left in the green sweater, and Nick Gatelli, who is the middle on screen, an ecologist, have led since 2012. It's the Evolution of Terrestrial Ecosystems Working Group, which has been funded by the National Science Foundation to look into ecological change through deep time. We've been able to attract a lot of wonderful young women and men to work with the group, many of whom have gone on to academic and museum positions. The connections these people have formed through the working group and the experiences they've had will motivate them, I hope, to make similar opportunities for their own students and colleagues in the future. And then the second example shows what is possible when you can connect with people of other continents and cultures. This is my field team on a project in Kenya only about a year ago. It has been so inspiring to see how Kenyans are emerging as scientists in anthropology. The young man in the center there is getting his PhD in France to do wildlife conservation and human impact in his own country, which in Kenya, in Maasai land, where where we are on this expedition. Tremendously impressive. And his wife is also working on becoming a professional as well. So this is building toward improving the kinds of exchanges of ideas that we can have. And it definitely expanded my mind to understand what these folks were thinking about their own country and their own ecosystem. I'm sure other bearded ladies could tell similar stories about the great benefits of inclusion, how they have formed lifelong collaborations and friendships, not only with other women, but with whole communities of people who have enriched their scientific careers and personal lives. This is what we should work toward for everyone. And it's a major message, positive message of the Bearded Lady Project. Now I'd like to introduce for the next presentation, Jen Collins, Manager in the Office of Education, Outreach, and Visitor Experiences at the National Museum of Natural History. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kay, and hi, everyone. So I'm part of a team responsible for creating programming at the Natural History Museum. And this exhibit presented a really important opportunity to challenge ourselves both internally and to challenge our public to kind of reflect upon not only gender bias in science, but also expose broader issues of diversity, equity, access in science. And so the questions that you see here and that Kay mentioned, along with others like, what does a scientist look like? These not only frame the experiences of visitors walking through the exhibit, but they also really helped us design the types of programming that spark conversations between members of the public and our female scientists and other women at the museum. So much of this work centered on helping our visitors better understand who is and who can do science, and then also how women have worked to overcome barriers and really where these barriers to continue to exist for different people. So one of the programs that we designed and hosted was an after-hours screening of the film and a panel discussion with Lexi and Denise and Kay, who you just heard from, along with one of our paleobiology postdocs, Laura Saul. So our after-hours programs normally attract an adult audience, but this one attracted an audience with a much broader age range, including middle and high school girls, which is really one of the target audiences of this project. So the panel was moderated by Leslie Arena, a curator at the National Portrait Gallery, who guided the conversation around the journey of the Bearded Lady Project, the experiences and impacts of people like Kay and Denise, and really the perspectives about the future. And as we hope, the insights that the panel shared had the type of impact we were aiming for. I want to show you just two of the quotes that came back in our post-program survey. The first one, powerful, so brave and important to discuss this subject. And the second one, I watched through a lens of a mom whose son wants to be a paleontologist, and how do I support him as a Black male? So this first quote really gives us a good indication that the featured women struck an emotional chord. And I find this second quote particularly powerful because it really is an indication that the stories shared by the women were valuable not only as they related to gender, but also to race barriers in science. And I gotta share another kind of inspirational quote from the survey left by an 11-year-old girl. I thought this program inspired me that I can do paleontology. Of course, this kind of inspires us all. So we also organized a Challenging the Face of Science Expert is In program series. And Expert is In is really a regular part of our public programming at the museum. And it's where our scientists and other experts spend about 2 hours in the exhibits, talking informally and sharing objects with our visitors. And rather than conversations focused on science research, which is what we typically do, we wanted these programs to spark conversations specifically centered around the themes of the exhibit and the project. So this meant a slightly different approach to our planning. What we did is we started with a lunch and learn for potentially interested scientists from across the museum, so we could frame really how the goals of this program were different, and then also address questions and concerns about anticipated public reaction. 20 different women from the museum signed up to present, and we started working with each one to identify their key messages and questions, identify prompts that inspire visitors to ask the types of questions that lead to the types of conversations these women really wanted to have. And I want to show you here, this is an example from Laura Sol, who I mentioned was one of our early career researchers in paleobiology. And you can see from these questions, she was really interested in conversations about her career path, about her outreach balance, and then also the mentors that have led her through her career. Other scientists, they created prompts centered on family life balance, how they integrate science with other interests like art, what it's like to work in the field. And then also some were really interested in talking about their hopes for future female scientists. So I'm gonna go, another important part of this preparation was to help scientists really identify the right objects that would help guide the conversation in the directions that they wanted. And we learned that object selection was really important. If there were specimens people naturally wanted to talk about, I guess if there were specimens, the scientific specimens, this really led the conversation down the science path. But in order to spark these other types of conversations, we had to use more personal objects. So for example, one of our experts, Brianna Pobner, used photos of her young son accompanying her in the field. So people would ask her questions about being a mom and a scientist and how family can be part of field work. And this quote here that I show you is from one of our, well, actually a couple of our scientists. And notice that both of these suggest that the conversations that took place were meaningful and that the scientists really did help broaden the perception of who does science. And it's our hope that we can continue to deepen understanding. I mentioned that we had 20 different women from the museum sign up to host one of these programs. But after the museum closed, we really were only able to host 5 of those before that happened. But what we have done has been really important, and I think everyone involved has felt the responsibility to take the work of Lexi and scientists like Kay and Denise and connect it to the wide range of visitors we get at the museum. So throughout this process, we really sought expertise and tried to deepen our own understanding of gender bias and other biases in science. As part of this work, staff participated in unconscious bias training, and we sought perspectives from one of the target audiences by hosting a focus group with our Q crew and Yes teens. And these girls were particularly interested in us tackling a range of different biases and inequities. And like we do with all our programs, we try to learn from each one and adjust to have a greater impact. And it really was unfortunate that we had to pause these efforts, but we do plan to pick them back up again once the museum opens. So I want to thank you all very much, and I'm going to hand it back to Barbara.
So thank you, Jen. And this concludes the first portion of this program. Please join me in thanking Lexi, Denise, Kay, and Jen for sharing their work, their experiences, and their very personal stories. As you can see, these personal stories are an important part of the power of the project. And if you're interested in learning more, we've included some links in the chat that will allow you to follow up. And I'm sure you've also gotten a sense of how important these conversations are, and that we should continue them. And I hope you can join us for the workshop that begins in just a few minutes. And so at this point, I'm just going to say, hope to see you soon.
I hope you all enjoyed that wonderful discussion as much as I did. And a huge thank you to all our speakers and panelists, and to all of our viewers for joining us today. If you pre-registered via Eventbrite for our virtual breakout workshop featuring the organizers of the Bearded Ladies Project immediately following this, please use the Zoom link we emailed to attend. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, for our last day of the symposium, which will focus on defining the future in science. Thank you, and enjoy your evening.
Sally Ride was the first American woman in space. For the Space Shuttle program, NASA wanted to recruit a new kind of astronaut, a scientist or researcher. Sally Ride's specialty on her first flight, STS-7 in 1983, was working the remote manipulator arm. It takes a lot of precision, and she really had become an expert. She took her responsibility not only to be a member of her crew, but also to be a real leader in the direction of NASA going forward. As a child, I was at Sally Ride's launch in 1983 on a family vacation, and so I remember seeing that shuttle go into space. And the example for young girls of being able to see a woman in space as an equal part of a space crew really opened doors and opened minds to the idea that women could participate equally in this highest of frontiers.